When we were first created by Satan, we were a whole heck of a lot more powerful than we are today. At one point, we were equally as the gods. We had immortality, supreme mindedness, and then the enemy decided to get in there and attack, and we have been spiritually degenerated to the point that we are today. This is very sad. Now, I want to specifically talk about the brain function. Not so much getting into the immortality or complete supreme mindedness or the siddhis, but more specifically the brain. This is at risen level instead of complete godhead. We were using 100% of our brain, and today it has been measured that we are only using 10% of our brain or somewhere in that region. The other 90% or so is completely dormant and unused. Now, there's a lot of the 10% myth going around, and the enemy wants to deceive people into believing that we're already using 100% of our brain, even though it's been completely proven to the contrary, such as the dormancy of the human brain, Dormant Brain Research and Development Laboratory. This is a little excerpt from the Lingo director, his research report, and he goes to say the human brain is only 10% functional at best. The first to outline this theory, later proved a fact by others, was Australian neurologist Nobel laureate Sir John Eccles. And he says the brain indicates its powers are endless. In England, John Lorber did autopsies on hydrocephalics. This illness causes all but the sixth-inch layer of the brain tissue to be dissolved by acidic spinal fluid. He tested the IQs of his patients before and during the disease. His findings showed that the IQ remained constant up to death. Although over 90% of the brain tissue was destroyed by the disease, it had no impact on what we consider to be normal intelligence. Then we have Russian neurosurgeon Alexandry Luria that proved that the one-third bulk of the frontal lobes are mostly dormant. He did this by performing ablation experiments on people. He gave psychological and physiological tests before he cut out parts and whole frontal lobes and retested after. His conclusion was removal of part or all frontal lobes caused no major change in brain function. The frontal lobes are mostly dormant or asleep. Finally, the human brain contains 10 billion neurons, mostly in the outer layer of brain cortex. The function of these currently dominant cells is fairly clear, but the brain almost contains 120 billion glial cells. Aside from secondary nurturing of neurons, the primary function of the glial is not clear. And their hypothesis is that there's a Big Bang miracle, perhaps, that awaits mankind within these mysteries. And the research report goes on, but the point is, these are neurologists and brain surgeons who have gotten together and done actual experiments on the brain, cutting parts out, or people have had diseases that have rotted it away. There's also cases of hemispherectomy, which is where you cut half of the brain out. You remove a whole hemisphere. And yet they are the exact same as before the procedure. If we were using 100% of our brain, this would probably kill us, or at least you would think would drop our IQ a couple points. However, most of the time, there's no difference in intelligence whatsoever, or function. So, the evidence is out there. All you got to do is research. It's completely proven that we only use 10% of our brain. But of course, you have all these cover-ups that go on, and most of these are simple medical doctors who get on their soapbox about it. They don't even have the right to be talking about the subject that they're talking about, but that's the enemy. They get in and they cover stuff up that they don't want you to know about. Now, why do they hide it so much? Well, they hide it because if you were using 100% of your brain, imagine the intelligence level that you would have. There's a good movie that's called Limitless. And in the movie, the plot goes on that there's a man who is kind of down on his luck, and he meets someone who gives him a magical pill that allows him to use 100% of his brain and gives him immense intelligence. Although, my personal opinion, he didn't use the intelligence very well in the movie, and the man who gave him the pill even stated it helps if you're smart to begin with before you get it, because sometimes you can have intelligence but common sense sort of lack, and he really messed himself over by his unthought out actions, and later learned that he didn't need the pill, that simple common sense sometimes will suffice better than extreme intelligence. But the point is that if you can have extreme intelligence with common sense, they go hand in hand, and that is the best combination that you would want. A lot of people today, as Hitler stated, are walking dictionaries. They know a lot of facts, but they don't have a lot of common sense. If you can't strategize and think like a tactician, you can have all the intelligence you want, but it's not going to work out for you. Unless, I suppose, if you're all powerful, like a god, you might be able to get away with it a little bit more, but even the gods strategize. That's why they don't just come down here tomorrow and, stick their chests out and they're the big man on the block and they're gonna, do it all. You have to have strategy, especially in war. Okay? Being able to have critical thinking, to me, is the highest kind of intelligence that there is. To be able to see around things and what you need to do and not mess yourself over. But nonetheless, the movie was a very interesting movie about how you could have extreme intelligence if you were using more of your brain. This is what the enemy fears because they want us dumbed down. They want us to be stupid. And they think if they can keep dumbing us down, that they will be able to completely control us, which is true because dumb people are a lot easier to control than incredibly smart people. Take the Nuremberg, for example. They did an IQ test over in Germany when Hitler was in power, and the minimal IQ of everyone in the Nuremberg was 160. That's super genius. That's extremely high. So, the leaders of Nazi Germany were incredibly smart. They were beyond super genius. And this was because most of them, more than likely, had their serpents risen. And this is how we can get to 100% of our brain very quickly, is by rising the serpent. We can meditate and slowly open part of our brain more and more, but once you raise the serpent, it stimulates 100% of your brain, both hemispheres, and it opens all of it, and you're using 100% of your brain. This is what the enemy fears more than anything, because they want us dumbed down like cattle and controlled like slaves with disposable human life. This is not what our true creator God Satan wants for us. He wants us to be beyond super genius. He wants us to be complete supreme-minded. This is his gift to us that he wants us to fully receive, and we have to finish his unfinished work. This is why meditation is so important, because if you can empower yourself and you can raise your Kundalini, you'll be using 100% of your brain, and at that point you will never be able to be lied to or controlled by mind manipulation again. You will be able to strategize, and there is no end to the things that you could accomplish. And furthermore, if you were to continue along that path, you would receive complete immortality and immunity to destruction through ways of trying to physically kill you, because the chi energy would make you, for the most part, impenetrable. So you wouldn't be able to be killed very easily. And thus, you would be what we would call a god. You would not be a god in the mindset of some supreme-minded, all-knowing being that floats throughout the universe and does whatever it wants. But you would be a god considered to what humanity is at today. And this is the complete annihilation and destruction of our enemies, Satan's enemies. And that is why they fear you knowing this so much, because if everybody knew, hey, if you do meditation, you can go from 10% to 100% of your brain, everybody would be jumping on it like no tomorrow. So of course they're going to come in and they're going to try to make, the 10% myth, and any kind of myth that they can bring in, the myth of existing. You don't really exist at all. This is all just fake. Whatever they have to tell you to get you to believe, to screw you over. That's the end result, and it's obvious. And when you find flaws in their logic, they know that they're there, and you try to address them, and of course they just blaspheme you off or whatever. You're nothing, you don't know what you're talking about. Because when somebody knows they're lying, all they have to do is keep up the facade. They're not interested in intellectual debate. They're interested in you believing a bunch of bull. So our kundalinis used to be above our crown chakra, heaven. And if you kind of think of the analogy here, Satan is the serpent, and he was up in heaven. Then he fell down in a fiery burst into hell, your base chakra, which is what happened when your chakras were sealed, because the Kundalini cannot stay ascended if the chakras are closed completely. So it fell and it went to sleep. You have to, what your job is you need to wake it up, and you need to have your chakras empowered completely again, to where the Kundalini, or Satan, rises back up from hell and back into heaven to rule once again. This is extremely important that we all get to this point. So, as I said, that would be the complete destruction of our enemy. So this is why they fight this so vehemently.